Hey everybody, thanks for joining. Oh, let me get the video going here. Thanks for joining. We're gonna get started here in just a second, give a couple people a chance to join. There we go. All right. Not that you need to see me, but probably more interested in hearing me, hopefully, but just in case. So we got that set up. Thanks again for everybody signing in. I know you probably have busy days and made some time to learn a little bit here about about QuickBooks. So hopefully this is going to be useful for you. So I appreciate everybody joining in. My name is Eric Wynand. I'm the founder of PlotPath Finance, and I don't normally talk like this. I have a don't know what I have. Caught something last couple of days, and so it sounds like I have a frog in my throat. But I will be able to get through it. Dawn is driving the screen share. She's a CPA on our team, and so the goal here today is to walk you through the top 3 things that we feel, anyways, business owners should know how to do in QuickBooks Online. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Dawn, jump to page 2 there, and I'll just tell you a little bit real quickly about who we are. So like I said, the business is PlotPath Finance. We've been around for about 4 years, and we do finance and accounting for small and medium businesses. We are bookkeepers, controllers, and CFOs. Some of us are CPAs, some of us are not. And what we do that we consider different than most other accounting, CFO, bookkeeping firms is data-driven and forward-looking, meaning a focus on getting the data right so that your analysis and reporting is efficient and accurate. And the other aspect of what we do is what we call full stack. So we're not just a CFO, pointing fingers, or just a bookkeeper processing transaction, not thinking about the bigger picture. We've got the whole talent stack on our team, meaning bookkeepers, controllers, and CFOs to take care of the finance and accounting in a way that gives you useful information to make decisions about your business. So anyways, that's a little bit about us. So Don, go ahead and go to next slide here. And so let's get into it. And you guys, we've got let me see, make sure the Q&A and all that stuff is working. So we've got the chat and we've got a QA here. So feel free to post questions in either place, and we'll address them as we go through. Okay, so the 3 big picture topics we're going to talk about here are reporting, accrual versus cash, and getting paid, which is all about invoicing, accounts receivable, collections. Okay, and so these are big picture topics that business owners should care about. We're going to get into QuickBooks and we're going to show you exactly how to do some of these things, where to click. It's not necessarily the idea here. The idea is for you to know that these things exist and more or less their capability, so that you can implement them in your business. Not necessarily teaching you bookkeeping here. Of course, if you're doing some of this stuff in your own business, it's going to be helpful. And if you have follow-up questions about exactly how to do something, feel free to holler at us. But the point here is big picture, how this applies to you running your business, so that you can, make use of it. Okay, so when it comes to reporting, we're going to talk about the reports that you should use, and then how to customize them to your exact needs. Accrual versus cash. We're going to talk here about getting to proper accrual accounting and what that means conceptually and generally, and how exactly that works in QuickBooks Online. And then getting paid, we're going to talk about the reports and other tools and tricks that you should be using to accelerate cash flow, which essentially means get paid sooner, so that you find yourself less often in cash crunch situations. And just one last thing, we're talking about QuickBooks Online here, and that's what we're going to show in the training. But a lot of these are conceptual, and they're going to apply to any accounting system that you use. So if you use a different accounting system, or you transition to a different one, or whatever, a lot of this is conceptually the same across systems. All right, perfect. So reporting. Might be kind of basic, but maybe not. Sort of, this is how an accounting and finance brain thinks about the finances of a business. And so that's kind of what I'm going to try to transmit to you here. There are 5 key reports to manage your business, and you need to be looking at these reports periodically. And by that, I mean at least monthly. You ought to be closing your books on a monthly basis. And when that's done, you need to be looking at your profit and loss, P&L or income statement, your cash flow, your balance sheet, your AR, and your AP. Those are the 5 things you need to be looking at regularly to have good financial hygiene. There's a lot of other reports that you can and should use when you run your business. Double clicking on some of these items, right? Like AR detail, AP detail, looking at your P&L at certain line items and certain revenue and by customer and all these kind of things. So you need to be doing that. And depending on your business situation, you need to build out the right reports that support you in that. But at a minimum, run these 5 reports. And if you're doing this, you're not going to go too far off the rails when it comes to finance and accounting, or at least you'll know if you're going off the rails. I think let's jump over real quick to the reporting package, Dawn. And we'll share the recording of this webinar and the presentation itself with you. Actually, let me do this. Let me put real quick in the chat the links here. Here we go. Okay, there we go. So there's 3 links in that presentation there, and I just posted them to the chat. So feel free to open these up and look at them over there. First one we're looking at here is the financial reports example package. So this is the standard package that we do on all of our engagements, and you ought to have something similar when you finalize the books. It's really just those 5 reports we talked about. It's got 14 reports because there's multiple views. So there's the P&L first and foremost. And it's got 4 views: a summary, meaning like a collapsed view, it's high level, and a detail, meaning a expanded view, see all the detail accounts. And then it has a year to date and monthly. And then the same setup on the balance sheets. That's why you get multiple views of this. But just scroll down, Dawn, to the P&L there. So there's the 5 reports, and then this is what you're going to be looking at, right? I'm going to look at my P&L year to date. I can look at it compared to last year, look at my year-over-year changes in dollar amounts and in percentages. And that last column over there is a percent of income. So I can see any, margin expense as a percent of income. That's a helpful metric to have. So this is what we're talking about for month-end reporting package. You ought to be looking at this on a monthly basis. Don, jump over to the dashboard real quick. I'm just going to share this with you really quick. What is a lot of time difficult for people to make sense of a giant reporting package is it's, pretty heavy duty. You kind of have to know where to look, and it's an eyesore. We roll this out on our engagements, and it's a visual of the financial statements. So this is a portal we provide to clients. The back end of this is all of your QuickBooks data, and it's just a dashboard that shows you prior month performance and year-to-date performance, year over year versus budget, all these kind of metrics that you should be tracking. So on one page, it gives you a view of revenue, margin, expense, net income, cash flow, and like unit sales. So this sort of thing is sort of next level. It's useful to have. It's not necessary, but when you get to a certain point of volume, it might be useful to monitor the business. Yeah, go ahead, Dawn, and there you go. And so behind this, if you do data-driven, forward-looking accounting correctly, you can do cool things like this, like, okay, well, let me see my margin by customer or project or in a particular line of business. So this is just an example of this same data that's all sitting in QuickBooks can just roll up and show you your revenue, COGS, margin dollars, and percent by customer. We can break down the COGS into the, you know, what it's made up of. And so this is just a visual representation of what we're talking about when it comes to reporting. So I just wanted to show you that. That's kind of next level where you want to be, you know, want to get to eventually. And then Don, I guess jump over to the QuickBooks online test drive company, and we're going to go through some of the strategies that we talk about here on the presentation. So let me post real quick the presentation. So if you guys want to open it up as we walk through this, you'll have it. Give me just a second to grab the link. There we go. So I just shared this with you. Just a Google Sheets file. So, all right. So diving in. Report group strategies. So yeah, here we are in the reports menu of QuickBooks Online, and there's two kind of strategies here to create reports groups that are useful for you in running the business. So management reports is one. So see, you're on reports menu, and then here this sub menu, this third tab is called management reports. You can see here that QuickBooks Online comes with some built in as examples. So you can click on these and mess around with them. Dawn, yeah, click on that one. Click export as PDF. We'll see if it pops out just fine. Open that up. There you go. And so this default one from QuickBooks has the P&L and the balance sheet. But what you can see about this is in 2 seconds, I can create a really nice looking report that gives me as much as little information as I need. So this reporting package that we build on clients uses this management reports strategy. It has a lot more reports, and like we saw, the different monthly and year to date and detail or high level views. But the good thing about it is that you can go back over, Dawn, to QuickBooks. You can finalize your books. You've got this great reporting package set up. You come over here, you can change that report period. See how it says this year? You could change that to this year through last month. Yeah. There you go. And then, yeah, you can export it or view it or whatever, and boom, you have your financial results through the end of the month. Click on the company overview report itself. Dawn, I think, is it going to take you to the preview here? Close out of that. Click on that drop-down arrow and click edit. I think it is, yeah. So this report group strategy is this. This is how you build the report. So get your cover page, your table of contents, all that stuff. And then you've got this reports section down there at the bottom where you go in and you find the reports that you actually want in QuickBooks and add them to the package and then configure them. Okay, so that's how you set up this management reports package. Jump back out, Dawn, to the custom reports over there. And so what's really useful is to build the reports that you want and then go add them to that package, okay? So those are all going to become custom reports stored over there. Yeah, let's build one. So yeah, go to your P&L. Let's do this year to last month. Display columns by total. Yeah, sorry, no, you're right, months. Run report. And now we've got a monthly P&L, okay? Scroll up to the top, Don, and we'll save it. Just, yeah, give it a name. You could add it to a group, so click Add New Group. There you go, add that. Here you can share it with all or none. This is share it with other people that have access to your QuickBooks, or just have it for yourself. Just say save there. Now jump over to your custom reports. And so now this P&L is showing up as a custom report that you've saved. And then you can go use it in the management reports feature. Jump back over, Don, to, yeah, you could show it here real quick. Add new report. And it's at the very top. They put those custom ones at the very top. There you go. So now you've got that in there, and you can do some additional configuration there, comparing to previous year, previous period. So that's how that workflow would work. Go back to the custom reports. Now, that's really useful, the management reports. There's a couple other tricks you can do in the custom reports with the group. So we made this group called month-end close statements. And you can do a couple neat things like export the group as a PDF. So you click on that on the drop-down arrow, and you can export it as a PDF. You can schedule an auto email, which is where you went first on. So click on that edit button. You can say set email schedule, and then you could build out a list of custom reports, and then you could have these automatically emailed to yourself or to your accountant, or your accountant can set it up and email it to you as on a regular basis. Okay, so that's a little bit of flexibility that you don't have in management reports, but you can do it via custom report groups. You can't export all of these as an Excel, which would be kind of cool, like drop 5 different reports into an Excel package. It won't let you do that. You can export them individually to Excel with the drop down there. And so if you want to get these into Excel for additional analysis, that's the way you would do that. All right, jump back over to the presentation, Dawn, and we'll just show that real quick before we keep going. Next slide. Go back up one. There you go. So we're going to talk about a couple of these detailed points about making those reports that you're running more effective and efficient. So we're going to talk about relative date filters, prior period and year comparisons, margin percent, and this performance analysis using display columns by. And then we'll talk about sales and operational reporting, the difference between sales and income. So we're going to show you these things in QuickBooks. So jump over to QuickBooks, maybe go run that P&L again. And relative date filters is this. So you can set up a report that runs a date this year to last month, as opposed to manually configuring Jan 1 to October 31. And what that allows you to do is in each month, when you close the books, it's going to automatically update to as of the end of last month. So when I close the books in February for January, it's going to show me January results. When I close the books in April for March, it's going to show me January through March results. So that relative date filter is really useful, because then you can save this as a custom report, save it as a management reporting package, and with the click of a button, you can run your year-to-date reports, year-to-date through the end of last month. Okay, and it's useful in other ways too, like you can say last week, always show me last month, last quarter. So make use of those instead of manually entering dates, and then those are consistently updated because they're relative date filters as opposed to fixed date filters. All right, prior period and prior year comparisons, that's there. Why don't you do display columns by total, Dawn? It gets a little bit messy if you have all these columns, and do, yeah, there you go, and say run report. And so now we're seeing a year-to-date, year-over-year. This is the QuickBooks test drive company, so they don't have any prior year data in there, it looks like. But if you did, you'd see prior year, and then you see your dollar change and your percent change. Don, go back up to the top and say change the date to last month, and then change the period to previous year. Run report. And so now you could have if your business is cyclical and you want to see this October versus last October, you do it this way. Margin percent as a percent of income. So a lot of, an important number is percent of income in two key places. So margin percent, so your gross profit as a percent of your revenue, to know if I'm making 10% margins or 50% margins or whatever it is. And then percent of OPEX as a percentage of net income. So I know how my OPEX is tracking. And of course, net income as a percent of revenue. You want to be, 10% plus. Ideally, you're in the 15%, 20% range. So if you add this percent of income, you have all those metrics. So if you go to your gross profit line down there, it's showing you that my margin percent is 95%. If I go down to my OPEX line towards the bottom, total expenses, it's going to show me that my OPEX is right above that, Don, 54%. And my net income percent is 4.57%, way down there at the bottom. So that percent of income is a really useful checkbox there to get those metrics onto your P&L. The performance analysis with display columns by. And so what this means is that you can take this columns, and we were talking about showing months or years. If you want to know last month's revenue by customer or year-to-date revenue by customer, you click on customers here. Yep, run report. And here we go. I've got each customer's revenue. There you go. Don's just trying to get rid of that percent of income so it's not so messy. Each last month's revenue, COGS, expense by customer. And so that's a really useful report for people, wanting to know, how what their revenue is composed of in each period. You can do the same thing for year to date or whatever it is. And then just like customer, you can do vendor, employee, product services, any of these things. And this is, vendors might be relevant if you're tracking purchases or COGS, or employees is going to be relevant if you want to look at your salaries broken down by person. So those are all useful in certain situations. There's two other categories here that you're able to break up your reporting by that you have to turn on in settings. So I want to show you that real quick. Accountant settings, advanced. So these categories here track classes and locations. So these are just two additional fields in the QuickBooks database where when you record transactions, you can specify a class or a location. So location is, you can do it by your different offices. If you break your business up into different states or regions, you can do that. Classes is really flexible. You can do whatever you want with that. If you want to break your lines, your business up into different lines of businesses, and it doesn't make sense to do it on your chart of accounts, you can do it with these classes. So turn those on and then just hit save. And then when you go back over to your P&L, uh-oh, we got booted out. 1 second, and we'll get logged back in. So I'll let Don get logged back in and get back to that P&L and show you that. But really, we're just going to point out here that you can add these other classes and locations as ways to break down the business on your P&L or balance sheet or whatever it is. And then I'll address this last point here, which is sales and operational reporting. So QuickBooks can do really useful operational reporting. So not just high-level P&L and balance sheet, but if you're loading in, all of your daily activity, even if you're a high-volume business, you can automate that a link link that information in, integrate with a Square or a different POS or front end system, and you can. Don's showing you there the location. The classes now are showing up as options. So you can have all this operational information here. You can have your entire inventory and track your inventory. And then you can use QuickBooks just for more than just running a P&L and a balance sheet. You can, Don, over in the reports section, scroll down here to like sales and customers. So here you can get into some really good operational information. Sales, which is gonna be all your sales forms, so your invoices and your sales receipts. You've got all this inventory reporting. So this is all really useful. One thing that I want to just clarify that people don't necessarily understand is that the difference between sales and income, okay? So when you look at income and revenue on your P&L, what you're looking at is every transaction that has been recorded to an income account on your chart of accounts, okay? And you can go to accounting chart of accounts and you can see your income accounts over there, every single transaction. When you look at sales reporting, all the sales by customer, sales by location, that's just sales forms, okay? And what sales forms are invoices, sales receipts, credit memos. There's a couple other, refund receipts and things like this, but they're particular forms that you create and, you send an invoice to the customer, the sales receipt to the customer. That drives your sales reporting, okay? And so sometimes that's different than your income, because sometimes you come along and you create a journal entry to defer or accrue income, or you have some other, you have a deposit which you record directly as income, and so that's not going to show up on your sales reporting. So just keep that in mind. That's why your sales and your income could potentially be different. All right, so next, jump back over to the presentation real quick, Don. We'll just show this slide real quick, and we're going to go through this pretty quick. Just a few other key items on reporting that I thought would be useful to share. Bullet point 1 there, we already talked about customizing reports and custom reports and using them in management reports. One other trick is to save the URL as a favorite, so you can just go to that URL once you configure the report the way you want it. Save it in your bookmarks, and then you can always just click on that and it'll take you right to that report in your QuickBooks if you want to use that to track your AR, your AP, or something like that. So that's just a useful trick. Jump back over to QuickBooks, Don, and we'll just show everybody where these little detail customization things are. So yeah, run your P&L. And we like to run these things a lot of times in the top right, that customize there without cents. Because, you don't care if it's 50 cents or 75 cents. Usually when you're looking at your P&L and your balance sheet, you're concerned with, whole numbers. So that's useful. And if you're doing a lot of business, you can divide it by 1,000 and just shorten the amount of data you've got on the page. You can filter these reports, and this is really useful by account or customer, vendor, employee, these product, services, classes, locations. All those same ways you're able to view reports by, the columns by, you could also filter on those. So you could filter to a particular customer and then look at revenue by month. And so that way you can keep track of, am I growing this account or is it shrinking or whatever it is. And then lastly, I can't show you this. There's this report called the Custom Summary Report that is only available in the accountant version of QuickBooks Online. Intuit likes to do this sometimes. They have like certain features that only the accountants can access. It's just the ultimate, I call it the ultimate customizable report. So dangerous. It's only available to accountants. So it just means you can put different items on your rows and your columns. You can drag your your P&L accounts down to your rows and show your customers across your columns. And you can get the report looking exactly the way you want. So just FYI, that's out there. And you might, if you're trying to get to a report that you can't quite get to, you might be able to get to it with this. So just let your accountant know and they'll be able to configure it for you. All right, that's reports. Any questions from anybody before we keep going? Just post them there in the channel, in the chat. Okay, so we'll keep chugging along. All right, accrual versus cash, topic 2. This is really important for businesses as they grow and mature because they stop just looking at their bank account to determine how much money they have, and based on that, whether they can hire or fire or purchase new equipment or materials. They start needing to know how their business is performing in the particular period. And so for doing that, you really have to transition to accrual accounting. And so I'm going to try to explain this in layman's terms. It might be pretty basic because you might already know this, but the point here is to say it in a way that non-accountants can understand it. And so accrual accounting is recognizing income and expenses in the month that they belong, meaning revenue when you earned it and expenses when you incurred it. So think about payroll. Like if you pay people for October, but you don't actually, send out the check until November 1st, or maybe the check doesn't actually get cashed until November 15th. If you're just doing cash accounting, that's going to be a November expense, but it was actually an October expense. So accrual accounting is going to record a bill in October to recognize that expense in October, and then the cash is going to go out in November. But what you care about when you're looking at your October performance is having that expense in that month. And revenue, the same kind of thing. If you just record the deposits, the money coming in is income when you get it, but really you did all that work in October, but the money doesn't come in until November, you're going to have a mismatch there of where your revenue was recorded versus when you actually received it. And so what do you do there? You create an invoice in QuickBooks, and that's going to record the revenue in the month that the invoice is dated. Okay, so that's the basic, the invoice and the bills to get revenue and expenses in the right month. What is the benefit of this? Is it when you do this, you can look at reports for any period, be it a particular month, quarter, year, and know that it accurately represents your financial performance. And it's not distorted by timing of cash receipt or payment. Okay. And that's what you want as you business matures and you're running a bit bigger business and you're trying to plan. You need reports that tell you, how am I doing year to date? What's my true operational profitability? And that's what accrual accounting is trying to get you to. Okay. Quick caveat here on QuickBooks accrual accounting. Don, jump back over to QuickBooks and go to your P&L. And this is in that last bullet point in the presentation, but accrual versus cash in QuickBooks can be useful, but it's limited. Okay, so they have this little button here, and even in your settings, you can say I'm cash versus accrual, it's useful, but it's limited in that all it does is it takes those sales forms and those expense forms, and if an invoice is created in October, but the money actually isn't received until November, and you turn it to cash, it's going to put that money in November rather than in October. And the same thing with bills. It'll take invoices and bills and put them in the month they were actually paid. Okay. And so that can be useful to a certain extent when you're running cash basis reports for yourself or for tax filings at year end. That's the usefulness of this. It doesn't magically convert your books to accrual. And the reason is because to get your books into accrual, you have to do a review of your revenue model and your COGS and expense timing, and determine exactly how to record the transactions in order to create the accrual books. And so what that often entails is like recording a journal entry to amortize expense or revenue. And that journal entry isn't going to be treated correctly in QuickBooks when it does this whole cash versus accrual accounting method. And so that's the limitedness of that option there. Let's jump over, Don, back to the presentation real quick. And so that's the high level on accrual versus cash. I'm going to walk through a couple of examples here, and we're going to pull up this quick spreadsheet that I threw together to explain this. So here's an example of, say a web design firm with a 6-month project. They get 50% up front and the balance in 2 payments. So you can see invoice 1, 2, and 3 there. You got the invoice dates and the amounts there. The total project is 60,000, and it's over 6 months. So if you're just doing cash accounting, you're going to recognize $30,000 of revenue in November, $15,000 in February, and $15,000 in April. That's no good because you're working on this project throughout 6 months. You've got related expenses throughout 6 months. And so you're going to have this jumpiness in revenue that's going to make your P&L inaccurate, not make sense for you. And if you do this at scale, a bunch of different projects, all of a sudden your net income in October or in April or whatever it is not accurate. It's not useful for you. Because what you should be doing on an accrual basis is spreading this revenue out over the term of the project. So you can see there on row 21, we're saying that the accrual revenue here is $10,000 a month. Now that's just simple total divided by 6. You can have other ways to accrue your project revenue. You can base it on, hours that your team works on the web design project. And if total hours are, 60 and they work 20 hours in month 1, okay, that's 1/3 of the project done. We're going to recognize 1/3 of the revenue because we know we have 1/3 of the expense in there. So there's other methodologies to do this, and that's what we talk about when you have to review your revenue model and figure out the right methodology to accrue or defer your revenue. I say accrue or defer because in this case, defer, you're gonna end up deferring in November because you got $30,000 in cash, but that's not all revenue yet. That's really applies to future months. So you're only gonna recognize $10,000 of revenue and you're gonna defer $20,000 there. Over there in March, you've got $5,000 in accrued revenue because at that point you've done $50,000 worth of work, but you've only got paid $45,000. So those are just the balance sheet accounts that offset the P&L accounts that allow you to do the accrual accounting. Okay, so that's how it would look for like a 6-month web project. Just a couple other examples here. I'll just mention them really quick. Like a staffing firm with a 90-day guarantee or recruiting fee, or the recruiting fee is refunded. This means, okay, I'm going to staff this, make this placement, but I know that I might have to refund it 90 days from now. And so is it revenue today or is it revenue after the guarantee period is up? In accrual accounting, what you typically do is you create an allowance and say that, okay, on average, 10% of my placements fail and I have to refund. So in this month, I'm going to look at my total revenue and 10% of it, I'm going to recognize it as contra revenue, so not revenue, because I know in the long term, that's what's going to be refunded. And that gives a nice smoothness to your revenue numbers, and it's not, jerky based on actual refunds that end up happening. A restaurant business, say you've got a separate POS, you're recording that information in QuickBooks, either manually when it hits the bank or you've automated that link. Whatever it is, if you're recording that a few days after the month end, all of a sudden October sales are showing up on November 1st and 2nd and 3rd because that's when the money actually hits the bank. So on something like that, even if it's high volume and stuff's hitting every day, there are certain tweaks you need to make to get all of the revenue recognized in the right period. All right. That is accrual versus cash. I'll just give the group a chance to post any questions there before we keep going. Okay, great. Well, then we'll keep chugging along to the last topic here, which is getting paid. Like we said at the beginning, this is all about invoicing, AR, and collections. I'm going to post really quick in the chat here. Don's going to jump to this here a little bit later, but I just posted in there a blog that we have about creating what we call beautiful and functional invoices. So the key points here is that invoicing is a key touch point with your customers. So do it right. You know, people leave it for last, they forget about it, but this is where you're asking your customer, your client, your member to part with their money. So don't think all about your marketing and all about your client service and your account management, and then just leave invoicing to the back office bookkeeper and just send out this terrible looking invoice and this terrible email asking for money. Think about it as another touch point with a customer that you want to generate a positive experience for your customer. So in order to do that, brand your invoices so that you can reinforce your message. Don, jump down real quick to the slide where we've got the, so this isn't awesome branding because it's an accounting firm and you as a designer or whatever your firm is, you can do a lot better. But these are the basics here. Get your logo on your invoice. You can even add your tagline or some other marketing snippet, and adjust your colors to match your brand. That way it's a consistent experience for them, for your clients in this in this touch point they have with you. We're going to come back to this here in a second. Don, jump back up to the slide with the bullets. So, okay, so brand your invoice. Point 2, make it easy for your customers to pay. So you want as little friction as possible here, right? You're asking them to part with their money, so make it easy for them to do that. You want to have online payments set up. In today's world, everyone's expects you and is used to being able to pay for everything online. So you don't want to have, you know, pay by check only or whatever. Online payments is easy to set up. Within QuickBooks, there's QuickBooks Intuit Payments. You set it up, you configure it. They drop the money directly into your account once the client pays. The client, yeah, I guess open a, I don't think it's going to have, I don't think it's turned on in here, but so once, exactly. So this will take you to finalizing the, or setting up your QuickBooks payments. There you go. And what this is going to do is going to create this big green button on your invoice that says pay online. Customer clicks on that and they can either enter their credit card or their bank account routing and account number and send you the money. So you want to make that easy on your client. The good thing about QuickBooks is it automates some of the accounting. Once they click pay, it's going to mark that invoice as paid in your QuickBooks account. It's when they actually send the money to your bank account, it's going to automatically record a deposit in there. So when that money actually comes in, all you have to do is click match from your bank feed and the accounting's done. So that's the nice thing about QuickBooks payments. But there's other merchant service providers out there that you can set up online payments through. So whatever invoicing tool you're using, get online payments set up so that your customers can pay you easily online. We're going to talk about bank account, wire transfer, and instructions for the paper check. Easiest way to talk about this is on that example of the invoice. So yes, we want to create online payments, but some clients, you're never going to get away from this, are old school, and they will still have their own accounts payable process, and they have to send you a paper check and this kind of stuff. So see at the bottom left here, it says to pay by paper check, please include account number, blah, 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 and send to this address. Above that, it says for payments via bill pay, here's the account number, the routing number, and the bank. So if they're using their own ACH service, they'll need that information. If you've got international customers and you're accepting a lot of wires, you want to include wire instructions on your bill. You notice at the top here, we're saying, please use the pay online button to pay via ACH. So we're urging customers to do that, making sure they don't forget that. Why? ACH is a lot less cost than having them pay by credit card. And like we said, it automates all the accounting versus them manually sending checks or sending via their own ACH service. So that's sort of the order of priority that you want there. You want them to pay by ACH, but give them the options to pay in other ways. QuickBooks has a cool tool where you can, once you set up QuickBooks payments, you can, on each invoice, by default, and then on each invoice, you can say, okay, allow clients to pay me via ACH or credit card, one or the other, or both, right? And so what we often recommend to clients is they only offer ACH by default, and that reduces their merchant service processing expenses. Now, if a client asks to pay by credit card, not a big deal. You go in there, and on that particular invoice, you turn on the credit card option, and then you send it to them and let them pay that way. Jump down one slide, Don, and we'll talk about email, the next bullet over here. So email the invoice. So idea here is to write a quality email. This isn't a great one, but it's got the information that they need. So you want to include that again so that people can, if they have the printout of the email, they don't actually have the invoice on hand. A lot of people use their email as a to-do list, so all the information's there. Same thing. Please pay via online payments, but here's the information you need to pay in other ways. And then jump back over to QuickBooks, Don, and we'll look at the custom form styles, and then we'll jump into those last points on AR. So when we talked about branding the invoice and the email and all that, it's all here in this menu of custom form styles. So you go to the invoice, you click on that customize, is how you get here. There's another way to get here directly from settings, but there's a whole bunch of invoice templates that you can use. Yeah, change up the template. So you've got like these default templates that are in here. You can change the colors and add your logo and pick a font. You've got the hex thing there on the colors. You can add the exact color that you use for your logo and your brand to create that consistency. And so this is where you brand your invoice exactly the way you want it. Yeah, go to the content one there. And then so here the content, you've got 3 sections, your header, the middle here, and then the footer. And here you can add exactly the information you want. Some of those things we're talking about are added here. So at that bottom in the footer section there, you can add those payment instructions. In the middle section there, the table, you can configure that exactly to show just what you want to show, no more, no less to your customer. Sometimes on your invoices, you've got some stuff that's sort of like internal, like the names of the products and stuff. They don't necessarily have to be on the invoice. You can get rid of the product service name and just show the description. May or may not be relevant to show quantities and rates. So all this configuration is right here for you. And this is where you do the email. So we talked about writing the quality email. This is where you do it. Choose how your invoice appears. Here's your standard email. So you write it all out there, and there should be a reminder email. If you scroll down, there it is. So you originally send your invoice, and that's what the standard email goes with that. QuickBooks has this reminder tool that we'll look at here in just a second, and that's where you configure the reminder email. And then here's the payments. So like I said, by default, you can allow people to pay via bank, credit card, either or both. And so this is where you set it up. But then once you set it up and create your invoice on the individual invoice, you can override it and add or remove one or the other. Perfect. All right, so we're gonna look at the last slide here about some AR tips and tricks. Yeah, there you go. So we're gonna look really quick at accounts receivable aging reports, the summary and the detail. And then we're gonna talk about this reminder function and sharing the invoice link. So jump back over to QuickBooks and go to the reports, accounts receivable. So this is your AR aging summary. This is the one that we talk about when we say look at your AR on a monthly basis. This is what you should be looking at. So you know which clients have how much past due with you. And so this is the summarized version. It just shows it by client, and it schedules it out based on how old it is. So you can follow up with Red Rock Diner because they've got an invoice, at least one invoice for 156 past due more than 60 days. The other way The other report that's useful is the detail. So if you go down to who owes you, there you go. And so this is, it's going to schedule it out by how old it is. And it's going to show you the detail. So you have each invoice for you. So those two are how you need to be monitoring your outstanding AR. If you jump over to sales and then all sales, here you got all of your sales activity. So invoices, payments, credit memos, all that kind of stuff. You can filter this. Yeah, click on unpaid. So you can use these graphical filters up here at the top. And this is showing you open invoices, overdue invoices. So one useful trick here is to get to the invoices that you need with that filter. Click on that filter drop down, Dawn, in the left side there, the button. Or this filter to choose exact which transaction types you want and what status you want, what dates. You know, if you want to just remind people of the 1031 invoice, you just filter there to 1031. But get to the exact invoices you need, and then you can select them all like that, and you can click on this batch actions button here, and you can just say send reminders. I think if you do that, Don, I think it's going to give us an error, right? Try it. Oh no, it says it was sent. So I don't know if there was real emails loaded on these things or what, but this is the, like I said, this is the test company, so I don't think anything went out. But what you just did there was you took all of your outstanding invoices and you just sent everybody an email to remind them about it. So you need to do that periodically. So you review your AR, you figure out what's past due, and come over here, filter to the overdue invoices or the open invoices, and send out your reminder. That said, it's not always effective because sometimes these invoice and reminder emails, they just get pushed to a spam folder or like Google's promo or updates folder, and people never see them. Or maybe it's going to some inbox that nobody's monitoring. It's, you know, their AP at such and such inbox, not actually going to your client. So people always want to automate this collections process, which is great and should automate it as much as possible. This is about as automated as you can do it in QuickBooks, filtering and then automatically sending those reminders. There are other tools that will link in with your QuickBooks and will, you know, pull in all the invoices, and you can set up automated reminders that go out when the invoice is, you know, a day past due. It'll send an email. So those are nice and can be useful if you've got that sort of scale and that much volume to make it useful. Sometimes it's not that effective though, because it has the same problem that all those email reminders and automated reminders just go to nobody. Nobody ever sees them. So for the most part, you still have to have human intervention in your collections process, and they got to know what's going on with each engagement, know which ones are outstanding and need to be collected, and you know who said I can't pay you this week, but I'll pay you next week when I get a big payment in. Somebody usually has to know that and track that somewhere, and then manually come in here and send reminders. And one thing you can do is like send an email from yourself as opposed to from QuickBooks. And a trick to do that is like on one of these invoices, Don, on the far right over there, click on the drop down arrow and share invoice link. And so you can go write an email, hey, John, I hope you had a good weekend. I just want to let you know that this invoice is still outstanding. You don't have to do it, Don. It's okay. And then copy and paste that link into the email and say, hey, here's your invoice. Hey, look at that. It worked. And so they click on that link and they get taken right here. And so that's sort of that manual process, but sometimes it's necessary. And the best thing you can do to automate it is that. Grab that invoice link from QuickBooks, drop it in the email or the text or the Slack or the chat or whatever you use with your customers, and give them that direct link so they can see it online and pay it right away. Okay, that wraps it up on AR. And for the webinar, that covers all of our topics. Last thing here, like I don't think I brought it up at the beginning, but I think it was on the slide. Want to say thanks for attending, and want to offer this special discount to you for doing so. If you mention the webinar offer code here that you see on the slide for attending this webinar, we're going to make this service that we have available to you at a 40% discount. So this is our dashboard tool where we load all of the QuickBooks Online data via an automated integration into the dashboard, and then give you access to it. And this is an interactive tool like we showed you before. You can hover over all this information and zoom in on exactly the customer, the line of business, the vendor, the month, whatever it is that you want, and it will facilitate your analysis and your monitoring of the business. This is actually, the front end of this is actually Google Data Studio, and so we can customize this to sync with other systems like your CRM or a different ERP or your point of sale system. And so it's a really flexible system. We're able to automate most of the update process once the books are closed, and so it's really, I think, reasonable and accessible price for someone who's looking to monitor their business this way and add a lot of value to your business oversight process. So like I said, reach out to us, and with that webinar code, we'll make this available to you. All right. Okay, if there are no other questions or chats, just check the Q&A. Nope. We will leave it at that. Thank you so much for attending. Feel free to reach out to me, Eric Weinand. My email is there, ew@plotpath.com, and you can find us at plotpath.com. Thanks so much.